Thank you. So, welcome to General Catalyst, John Laramie, CEO of AdStruc. So, as we described in the setup, this is a get-together that we've done semi-monthly for the last year, and I think the collection of people has been really interesting, but we actually haven't had a CEO on before. We've had Linda.
Gotta bring the big dogs in.
Yeah, we've had Linda from Etsy. We've had Jeff from Spotify, and a bunch of other great folks. So really excited to have John, and he's got a really really interesting business in the New York community, one that a lot of our startups are starting to benefit from. So John, tell us a little bit about what AdStruc does and how you got started.
Yeah, so we got into this space about 10 years ago, totally by accident. It was something that I was working on the side, trying to launch outdoor advertising campaigns. And
for who?
For a bunch of small brands that were trying to get awareness. One of them wanted to do what was launching linens at Bed Bath & Beyond's, and I was trying to figure out where out of home was around Bed Bath & Beyond's.
Yeah.
So the story was I was literally on a bike riding around trying to figure out what companies to call.
That's amazing.
So listen, there's all sorts of ways to start companies. We started this company because it was a problem, and we became obsessed about figuring it out. And so we built technology to bring this industry online, to bring these assets together, to understand where everything is, and to create efficiencies in how you can plan and buy it. And that company's morphed over the last 10 years from not just having from an enterprise side where we're selling software to large agencies, but it's become more of a managed services business. Where we're actually using our own technology and planning and buying on behalf of agencies, launching out-of-home campaigns, not just here in the US, but globally.
And what is out-of-home advertising?
Good question. Out-of-home is everything literally out-of-home. So that's everything from street furniture to taxis to subways to cinema to aerial banners to elevators, millions and millions of assets across the US.
So in the tech world, I think about kind of the drive between San Francisco and, Mountain View or Palo Alto, see the banners everywhere, and that's sort of always been a part of my experience at Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
It feels like in New York, we're seeing kind of the Calvin Kleins and the, Tommy Hilfiger billboards now starting to have a lot more company from the startup world, companies of ours like Oscar and others. Tell us a little bit about kind of the role that tech companies are playing in the out-of-home world in New York and more broadly.
So I think you bring up an interesting point about that ride on the 101, which was tech companies were using out-of-home then to get an awareness play for either investors or for acquisition, and they were just using one or two or three boards, and that was it. And they were awfully expensive, right, for the course of a month. I think New York saw that. New York tech companies saw that and said, how do you do that here in New York? And it's difficult, right? Because it's way more expensive to create that sort of intimacy and level of awareness with the media. And so I think you're seeing tech companies here in New York take over the subway, take over a bunch of bus shelters, run all over taxi tops. And it's reach, frequency, and awareness play, and I think a lot of them are using it for creating that level of awareness or impact, or hey guys, we're in this market, check us out.
And so are we, if you think about your experience in the subway then in New York as a consumer, have we hit peak tech in out of home, or are we just sort of at the beginning relative to other brands? Where are we?
I think we're like in the third inning. I think a lot of people are starting to use it. I think and big brands have come in and said, hey, this is how to do out of home. You see things like Oscar, you see things like Glossier that come in and create a big presence. And a lot of brands then come to us and say, hey, how do we do what Oscar did? How do we do what Glossier did? And so I think that's the fun that we get to see, is helping brands come out in New York or broadly, across the US.
How quickly are these companies seeing ROI? If you think about how, runway and cash is so much the lifeblood of a startup today, do they have the time to really see that ROI?
So it's a great question. I think, when clients come to us oftentimes and say, hey, we've got X amount of money to spend and we want to be on the subway, and you're like, guys, there's a big difference between where you are and what that media costs. So New York's a tough market to come out to and spend a lot of money in, depending on the stage at which you are as a company. So we're seeing ROI impact pretty frequently, pretty quickly in specific markets at specific spend levels.
Yeah.
But it varies on what are you looking for? Are you looking for ROI? Or are you looking for just general awareness?
Yep.
Are you looking for app downloads? How do you think about it?
Yep. Businesses that are particularly good for you and your internal agency, and businesses that are not. Who comes to you and you say that one, and who do you say?
There aren't businesses that we say no to based on the type of business they are. I think the hardest thing for us is when we have great brands come to us and they don't have the right budget set for it.
Yeah.
And listen, like we need to be more responsible as an industry, advising people of when they shouldn't be spending their money on this media, because they're not going to see an impact and they're never going to come back.
Right.
And so oftentimes we're cultivating those early stage relationships of guys, if when we want to go do this sort of execution, we need to be at this sort of spend level to do that, right? But it varies, right? We're buying from e-com to tech to fashion to QSR. I mean, there's a varying range of industries that we buy across. I think last year we bought across 30 verticals.
And what is this starter pack for AdStruc? Like if I wanted to think about getting going as a, not even just a tech company, but as a new customer of yours, where do you start?
I think what's most important, what we've seen most successful with our existing clients, is sitting down and really understanding the brand together, what the vision is, what the objectives are, what you're spending and how you're thinking about other media, because we see out of home as this great fabric of storytelling across other media formats, whether that's social or TV or online, it varies. But I think that's where it starts, is helping, like sitting down with us, Project X, our managed services team, of what are you thinking about? Where's the brand today? Where does it want to be tomorrow? And advising on what budgets and spend levels look like based on impact and estimated ROI in a particular market, right? So let's get to know each other, right?
Yeah.
Let's build a relationship from there, and then let's manage expectations accordingly and start to dig in on where can we go execute in specific markets based on budget, or thinking about, hey, where are you struggling in a market? Where are you opening up in a market? Let's help you understand, hey, you need $100,000 to go open up in Market Street in San Francisco to create this level of impact.
Yeah, that's cool. So, you know, I can sort of see one of our founders sitting in the room with you, or maybe one of their CMOs, thinking about building their business and out of home being a great way to do it. But you must look at them and sort of see yourself in their shoes a little bit of just building your own company. And you may not dog food your product to build your own business, but I'm sort of curious to take yourself back to the early days of starting AdStruc. You know, you talked a little bit about the origin story, but you've also had a really interesting approach to financing the business yourself. You're not a kind of traditional Silicon Valley or Silicon Alley startup. What's been your approach?
To be a cockroach, to run through as many walls as we can, to be incredibly smart about how we spend money. I remember my first board meeting where our investors were like, you guys aren't spending enough. And we were like, guys, this isn't about a matter of what matters most is about when we hit our stride in the market, and we need to make sure we have the capital in order to do that. And we knew then, 10 years ago, that we're playing in an unsexy, like out-of-home industry that the tech industry has been like, that's not interesting. Now look at who's spending a ton of money in the out-of-home industry. It's a bunch of tech companies. So we were really smart and strategic about when we raised capital, how much we raised, who we raised it from.
And that was from the very beginning, or that was after you'd gone, you know, dipped in however much, 50%, 75%, and you went, geez, this is not going to last forever? From the
very beginning,
That's
we
amazing.
knew that it was going to take a while for this industry to wake up to the importance of efficiencies, the importance of access, right, and transparency. And I'm not talking about transparency of media rates. I'm talking about, we had outdoor vendors in the beginning saying, guys, I'm not going to put my inventory online. I don't want people to see where my billboards are.
And
you're like,
prices,
huh?
or whatever.
They're on the street. Anyone can see these things. So it was this foundational breakthrough of helping the out-of-home industry understand of why technology will have an impact. And we knew that was going to take a while, and we had to do that in order to come out to the buy side of the industry and say, guys, you can go do this. And so it was small slugs of capital along the way. We wanted to maintain our ownership, and we wanted to maintain the majority of the company and our free will decision making.
Yeah.
And that's why today we're a very profitable company and growing well and hiring and not dependent on venture capital anymore.
Do you see, going back to the types of customers that are a fit for you, do you see companies coming to you and really blowing their wad, or wanting to blow their wad, and you sort of look at them and you can kind of advise them wearing your entrepreneur hat and know that this is not sustainable, this is not the way to build real value?
I think it's ebbed and flowed. I think we've seen that. I would actually argue, though, that in the last year and a half, we've seen more companies with moderate-sized venture capital not coming to the table with enough budget. Mm-hmm. And I think that speaks to the difficulties of fundraising in today's market and the need for ROI to be able to go raise another round of capital. So I think we're actually seeing today budgets come in at a great pace. But someone that goes and raises $100 million isn't coming to us and saying, here's $10 million, right? They're saying, here's a couple $100,000, go figure out where we should be in 1 or 2 markets.
And I imagine walking the subway, and when it was Handy and a bunch of vocational schools, Handy really stood out, right? Or Oscar or whatever. Is the clutter hurting ROI in the industry? Is the clutter of all of these different tech companies making it harder to stand out? Or is it, is it not really? Does it not really erode?
So I don't think there's an erosion to the types of companies. I think there's a natural erosion to the amount of inventory that needs to be hit or sustained at to be able to create that level of impact. And so when you see the subways, what's most interesting is half the car is one brand, half the car is the other brand. Like, that's fine. Outfront does a great job of making sure those aren't competing brands, right? But I think what's most important is that you get that level of impact. And so I don't think there's an erosion of the tech companies, who's this company versus this company. I think it's more, you almost want to get there because there's enough level of impact and spend across those brands.
And maybe just put your future glasses on for a second and help us understand how this whole industry is going to change. I mean, we talked briefly about the plane flying overhead with Net-a-Porter's banner behind it. That's been around for as long as there have been planes. But what's going to happen in this space, as whether it's digital signage, it's the use of data, it's even things as further out maybe as AR and VR. Like, how does your world change as everything is more connected and as everything becomes a screen?
So I think everything becoming a screen is real, right? It's going to take a lot of time. There's a lot of CapEx issues to it. There's a lot of zoning laws that create conflict or difficulty to bring it to market. What's changing the most today is just access to data, right? The fact that everyone is walking around with 1 or 2 cell phones in their pockets everywhere in the US and around the world, there is a ton of information that we're understanding that allows us to think differently about how we're targeting. How does that ad right there have the most impact on the largest segment of audiences that pass it every day between these particular apps? And that's most interesting, right? Because then you're going to get even further into attribution and ROI of the media. That ad changing to become a digital board, that's going to take time. And then that ad gets really interesting because now you're changing it when certain capacity levels hit of a particular audience in front of that board. So I think the biggest change in the future of the out-of-home industry simply comes down to a targeting perspective. Same as the online world, right? We got way smarter in the online world about how you can target audiences and segment. It's the same in the out-of-home space. It's just catching up.
And the platform companies that have sort of revolutionized, the way that advertising works in, social or other places on the web, do they have much of a role in your business, the Facebooks and Googles of the world?
Not yet. I've always taken the bet of, if we're the platform here in the US or globally, and by platform I mean we're the ones that are creating the efficiencies and the workflow, and we're sitting on the operations of the out-of-home industry, and those dollars are flowing through us. We've gotten a really interesting value proposition for the Facebooks and Googles of the world to look at us and say, you guys understand what's going on in the out-of-home space.
Yeah.
You've got a managed services team, Project X. You've got a software team.
Yeah.
That's an interesting combination of how we can then feed cross-channel dollars, right? And like, this space needed to get online.
Yeah.
We brought it online, and now it's a matter of like, how do we go spread it to all the other media formats?
Makes sense. Last question.
Yeah.
Advice for your old self. If you were starting your company again, what would you do differently?
I'd make decisions faster. I would try to sleep a little bit more.
It's a marathon.
It's totally a marathon. I sprint every day, and I'd have more fun, right? I think the stresses of building a company are incredible. They're astonishing, and I think the challenge there is maintaining health and balance, and knowing that like building a company is a huge responsibility, and you've got employees, and those employees have kids, and those are all your layers of responsibility. But to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, and that you don't lose sight of like what an incredible opportunity it is to have this level of freedom to be able to make these decisions and run your own organization. That comes with the stress, but to remember that we work for ourselves, and that's the best part of waking up every day.
Much easier when you're cash flow positive. Thank you for coming over.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right.